Picture this: a pregnant woman, humiliated at a charity gala in front of 500 guests. Her husband and his mistress dump food on her head while cameras capture every second. The video goes viral. She loses everything: her marriage, her savings, nearly her life during childbirth. But this isn't just another revenge story. This is about a woman who discovered that justice comes with a price. And happy endings are never as simple as they seem. If you believe in second chances and messy redemptions, hit that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe, because Claire's journey will challenge everything you thought you knew about survival and love. Let's begin. The crystal chandeliers of the Grandview Hotel ballroom cast golden light across 500 guests dressed in black tie perfection. Claire Donovan smoothed her hands over her white maternity gown, trying to ignore the tightness in her lower back. At 7 months pregnant, she shouldn't have been there at all. But Brett had insisted. "You need to show your face," her husband had said that morning, adjusting his tie in their bedroom mirror. "People are starting to talk about why you never attend company events." Claire had wanted to argue. She taught high school art to 28 students who needed her energy more than Brett's corporate colleagues needed small talk. But the look in his eyes, that familiar coldness, had silenced her. Now she stood at the edge of the ballroom, watching Brett laugh with a woman in red, Vanessa Sterling. The name had come up in conversation 3 months ago, then 6 times, then too many to count. "Claire, you look exhausted." Jenna Walsh appeared at her elbow, her best friend's face creased with concern. "Want me to fake a medical emergency so we can leave?" "I'm fine," Claire lied, though her feet screamed inside the borrowed heels. "Brett says the speeches start soon, then we can go." But Jenna wasn't looking at her anymore. She was staring across the ballroom where Vanessa had draped herself over Brett's arm, her crimson dress a stark contrast to his black tuxedo. The speeches began. Claire stood near the back, one hand supporting her swollen belly. Brett was called to the stage to accept an award for his department's performance. He spoke about teamwork, dedication, and sacrifice. The words rang hollow. When he stepped down, Vanessa intercepted him with 2 glasses of champagne. Claire watched them toast, watched Vanessa lean close to whisper something that made Brett throw his head back in laughter. Then Vanessa turned and locked eyes with Claire across the crowded room. What happened next would be replayed on social media millions of times. Vanessa walked straight toward Claire, her smile sharp as broken glass. In her hand, she carried a full glass of red wine. "Claire, Vanessa said loudly, drawing the attention of nearby guests. "I've been meaning to tell you how brave you are. Wearing white at 7 months pregnant? So bold." Before Claire could respond, Vanessa stumbled, her wine glass tilting forward in an arc that seemed to happen in slow motion. The red liquid splashed across Claire's chest, staining the white fabric like blood. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cell phones appeared, recording. Claire stood frozen, the cold wine soaking through to her skin. "Oh my God," Vanessa cried, her hands flying to her mouth. "I'm so sorry, I'm so clumsy." But her eyes weren't sorry, they were gleaming. Brett pushed through the crowd. For one desperate moment, Claire thought he would defend her, comfort her, do something to make this humiliation bearable. Instead, he grabbed a plate of pasta from a passing waiter's tray. "You know what, Claire," Brett said, his voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. "You've been making scenes for months, complaining about everything. Maybe this will cool you off." He dumped the entire plate over her head. Marinara sauce dripped down her face. Noodles clung to her hair. The ballroom erupted in shocked murmurs and the relentless clicking of camera phones. Claire's knees buckled. She clutched her belly, feeling a sharp pain radiate through her abdomen. The baby. Oh God, the baby. Through the blur of tears and humiliation, she saw a figure moving toward her. Owen Blackwell, a tech billionaire she vaguely remembered from college, was removing his jacket. He draped it over her shoulders, his face carved from stone. What kind of man humiliates the mother of his child? Owen's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Brett sneered. "Stay out of this, Blackwell. This is between me and my wife." "Not anymore, it isn't," Owen said quietly. He turned to Claire, his expression softening. "Let's get you to a hospital." As Owen guided her toward the exit, Claire caught one last glimpse of Brett and Vanessa. They were already turning away, back to their champagne and laughter, as if she had never mattered at all. The pain in her abdomen intensified. Claire pressed a hand to her belly, whispering apologies to the baby she prayed would be okay. Outside, Owen's driver pulled up in a black SUV. As they sped toward the hospital, Claire finally allowed herself to break. Sobs racked her body, each one sending another wave of pain through her core. "Breathe," Owen said gently. "Just breathe. You're going to be okay." But Claire knew the truth. Nothing would ever be okay again. The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Claire lay in the bed while Dr. Helen Parrish moved the ultrasound wand across her belly. The rhythmic thump of the baby's heartbeat filled the room, the most beautiful sound Claire had ever heard. "Baby looks good," Dr. Parrish said, though her expression remained serious. "Heart rate is strong, no signs of distress. But Claire, stress like this is dangerous. You're at high risk for premature labor if this continues." Jenna stood by the window, arms crossed, fury radiating from every line of her body. "I have video of the whole thing. Everyone does. That bastard assaulted you in front of 500 witnesses." Owen, who had waited in the hallway during the examination, appeared in the doorway. "I've contacted a lawyer, Ruth Martinez. She's the best divorce attorney in the state. She'll call you tomorrow." Claire wanted to protest, to say she couldn't afford a high-powered attorney, but Owen raised a hand. "It's handled. Consider it a loan, or don't consider it at all. Just focus on your health." After they left, Claire lay alone in the darkness, one hand on her belly. Her phone buzzed. A text from Brett. "I was drunk. Let's talk tomorrow. We can work this out." Hope fluttered weakly in her chest. Maybe he was right. Maybe the alcohol had loosened something cruel inside him that wasn't really there. Maybe in the morning, when he was sober, they could salvage something from this wreckage. She texted back, "Okay, tomorrow." The hospital discharged her at 2 in the morning. Jenna drove her home, insisting on staying. But Claire sent her away. She needed to face Brett alone. The apartment was dark. Claire let herself in quietly, padding down the hallway toward their bedroom. Maybe Brett was already asleep, already regretting what he'd done. She pushed open the bedroom door. Brett wasn't alone. Vanessa lay in their bed, her red dress pooled on the floor beside Brett's tuxedo. They were tangled in sheets Claire had washed 3 days ago, in the bed where she'd conceived the child now growing inside her. Brett's eyes met hers. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look sorry. "Claire," he said, his voice flat, "we need to talk." Vanessa sat up, pulling the sheet around herself with theatrical modesty. "Oh, this is awkward." Claire's hands went to her belly, a protective instinct she couldn't control. "How long?" she whispered. "Does it matter?" Brett swung his legs out of bed, reaching for his boxers. "I've been wanting out for months. This baby was a mistake. Claire, we both do. We both know it." The words hit her like physical blows. A mistake. Their child. The life growing inside her. The future she'd dreamed of. All of it. A mistake. "You said we'd talk," Claire managed, her voice breaking. "You said we could work it out." Brett laughed, a bitter sound devoid of humor. "I said we'd talk. I didn't say we'd work it out. I want a divorce. Claire, I want out of this marriage, out of this responsibility. Vanessa and I are moving to Chicago next month. New start." "The baby," Claire whispered. "Your child. Get an abortion," Vanessa said from the bed. "Or don't. Either way, Brett doesn't want to be tied down to some boring teacher in her accident baby." Claire's vision narrowed to a pinpoint. She backed out of the room, down the hallway, out of the apartment that had never really been hers. In the parking lot, she called Jenna, unable to form coherent words through her sobs. 30 minutes later, she was in her childhood bedroom at her parents' house, surrounded by high school art projects and faded posters. Her mother, Carol, sat beside her, stroking her hair like she was 10 years old again. "You're safe now," Carol whispered. "You and the baby. You're safe here." But Claire knew the truth. She would never be safe again. Brett had the money, the lawyers, the connections. She was a teacher with $32,000 in student loans and a baby on the way. How do you fight someone who's already taken everything by morning? Claire's humiliation had gone viral. The video, shot from multiple angles, had been shared across every social media platform. Hashtag gala humiliation trended worldwide. Celebrity gossip sites picked it up. News outlets ran segments analyzing the footage. Claire's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Text messages from colleagues. Emails from reporters requesting interviews. Friend requests from strangers who wanted a piece of her tragedy. She turned off her phone and stared at the ceiling of her childhood bedroom. Tom Donovan, her father, knocked softly before entering. He'd worked as a construction foreman for 30 years, his hands permanently calloused, his back permanently bent. He sat on the edge of her bed, not speaking for a long moment. "Your mother wants to drive to that apartment and set it on fire," he finally said. "I talked her down to slashing his tires." Claire almost smiled. Almost. "I need a lawyer. Dad. A real one. That billionaire, Owen, he already set that up." Tom's expression was cautious. "You knew him from college?" "Barely. We had one class together sophomore year. I didn't even know he remembered me." Her father studied her face. "People don't just help like that for nothing." "Claire Bear, what's he want?" "I don't know," Claire admitted. "Maybe he's just a decent person." Tom snorted but didn't argue. He left, and Claire forced herself to get up, to shower, to face the day. Ruth Martinez arrived that afternoon. She was 50-ish, sharp-eyed, dressed in a power suit that probably cost more than Claire's car. She spread files across the Donovan family's kitchen table while Carol hovered nearby with coffee and cookies. "The video is damning," Ruth said without preamble. "Clear assault, witnesses, multiple recordings. Normally I'd say this is an easy win. But Brett's family has money and connections. His mother is Sandra Hoffman, sits on 3 nonprofit boards, golfs with judges. This won't be simple." Claire's stomach twisted. "So what do I do?" "We file for divorce immediately. Restraining order, document everything, every text, every call, every interaction. Brett will try to paint you as unstable, emotional, using the pregnancy to manipulate him. We need to stay 3 steps ahead." Over the next week, Claire learned the brutal mechanics of divorce: restraining order hearings, depositions, financial disclosures that revealed Brett had drained their joint savings account. $47,000 Claire had inherited from her grandmother, money she'd been saving for the baby. "He can't do that," Claire said, staring at the bank statement. "That was my money. It was in a joint account," Ruth explained. "Technically legal, if morally reprehensible. We'll argue for reimbursement, but these things take time." Time Claire didn't have. Her principal had called. Voice sympathetic, but firm. "Given the media attention, we think it's best if you take the rest of the semester off. Paid leave, of course. Paid leave that would run out in 8 weeks." Then what? The one bright spot came from an unexpected source. The viral video had sparked outrage. Women's advocacy groups rallied around her. A GoFundMe appeared, raising money for legal fees and medical expenses. Strangers sent messages of support. "You're not alone," one woman wrote. "I survived my own Brett. You will too." Claire wanted to believe it. Brett's lawyer filed a countersuit, claiming Claire had been emotionally abusive throughout their marriage, that she'd trapped him with the pregnancy, that her hysteria at the gala proved she was mentally unstable. "They're gaslighting you in legal documents," Jenna fumed, reading the filing. "This is insane." But it was working. Some media outlets began questioning the narrative. Was she really the victim, one headline asked, inside the troubled marriage that led to gala meltdown? Claire stopped reading the news. She focused on the baby, on doctor appointments, on building a case. Ruth assured her they were winning. Then the judge granted Brett supervised visitation rights once the baby was born. Claire read the order in disbelief. "He dumped food on me while I was pregnant. How does he get any rights?" Ruth's expression was grim. His lawyer argued that the gala incident was marital discord, not child endangerment, and legally he is the father, absent proven danger to the child. Courts favor parental rights. That night, Claire lay in bed, feeling the baby kick against her ribs. She placed both hands on her belly and whispered, "I'll protect you, no matter what it takes. I'll keep you safe." She just wished she knew how. 3 weeks later, Claire thought she was finally gaining ground. The restraining order was holding. Brett had stopped his harassment. The media frenzy had died down to a simmer. She'd even ventured back to her apartment with Jenna to collect her belongings. The apartment was empty, not just of Brett's things, but of everything. Furniture, dishes, the rocking chair Claire had refinished for the nursery, all gone. He took everything, Claire whispered, standing in the bare living room. Even my grandmother's quilt. Jenna was already on the phone with Ruth. Can he do this? Just take everything. Apparently, he could. Marital property, contested ownership. He said, she said, more legal battles that would take months to resolve. Claire loaded her clothes and a few salvaged items into Jenna's car. As they pulled away, she didn't look back, but the worst was yet to come. That night, Claire woke to sharp pains radiating through her abdomen. She called out for her mother, who rushed her to the hospital. Dr. Parrish met them in the emergency room, her face grave. You're in premature labor, she said, at 32 weeks. We need to stop this if we can. They pumped Claire full of medications to halt the contractions. It worked. Barely. She lay in the hospital bed, monitors beeping, feeling utterly defeated. Owen visited the next morning, carrying flowers and a book of baby names. Thought you might need a distraction, he said quietly. Why are you doing this? Claire asked. You don't owe me anything. Owen sat in the chair beside her bed. Do you remember Introduction to Philosophy Professor Brennan's class, sophomore year? Claire nodded slowly. You sat in front of me every Tuesday and Thursday. You'd come in with coffee and an extra muffin. You'd put the muffin on my desk without saying anything. I was broke, working 3 jobs, barely eating. Those muffins probably saved my life. Claire stared at him. She had a vague memory of a quiet student who always looked exhausted, but she'd never connected him to the billionaire Owen Blackwell had become. I just thought you looked hungry, she said. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped. No questions, no judgment. Now it's my turn. Before Claire could respond, her father burst into the room, his face red with fury. Brett's here, in the hospital. He's demanding to see you. Security had stopped him in the lobby, but Brett was shouting loud enough for the entire floor to hear. That's my wife. That's my baby. You can't keep me away. Owen stood immediately. I'll handle this. No. Claire swung her legs out of bed, ignoring the nurse's protest. I'll handle it. She found Brett in the lobby, dressed in an expensive suit, flanked by his lawyer. Behind him stood his mother, Sandra Hoffman, a woman who'd made clear at the wedding that Claire would never be good enough for her son. Claire, Brett said, his voice dripping false concern. I heard about the baby. I came as soon as I could. You violated the restraining order, Claire said quietly. Security, please escort him out. Brett's mask slipped, revealing the fury beneath. That's my child you're carrying. Mine. You think some piece of paper means I don't have rights? The order says you can't come within 500 feet of me, Claire said. This hospital isn't that big. Sandra Hoffman stepped forward, her voice cold. My son has every right to be present for the birth of his child. We'll be filing to modify the restraining order immediately. Your son assaulted me, Claire said, loud enough for the gathering crowd to hear. In front of 500 people, on camera, and you think he deserves rights? I think you're an opportunistic gold digger who trapped my son with a pregnancy and is now using this circus to extort money, Sandra said calmly. And I have the resources to prove it in court. That was when Claire understood. This wasn't just about Brett anymore. This was about a family with unlimited money and connections who saw her as a threat to their reputation. Owen appeared at her elbow. Mrs. Hoffman, I'd advise you to leave before I call my lawyers. And trust me, mine are better than yours. Sandra's eyes narrowed. Owen Blackwell, I should have known you'd insert yourself into this. Always had a savior complex. And you've always enjoyed crushing anyone beneath your social standing. Owen replied evenly. But Claire isn't alone anymore. Remember that. Security finally escorted Brett out, but his voice echoed back. This isn't over. Claire, you'll never keep my child from me. Back in her hospital room, Claire collapsed onto the bed, shaking. The monitors shrieked as her blood pressure spiked. Dr. Parrish rushed in, calling for medication. We need to calm her down, the doctor said urgently, or we're going to lose this baby. But how do you calm down when you've just realized the fight has only begun, and your opponent has all the weapons they managed to stop the labor again? But Dr. Parrish's warning was clear. One more stress event like that, and we won't be able to prevent early delivery. You need complete bed rest. Claire, no exceptions. Complete bed rest in her parents' house, watching the world fall apart through a laptop screen. Brett's legal team filed motions daily. Motion to modify restraining order. Motion for emergency custody hearing. Motion claiming Claire was mentally unfit. Each filing cost money to respond to, draining the GoFundMe donations and Owen's seemingly bottomless generosity. They're trying to bankrupt you emotionally and financially, Ruth explained during a video call. It's a war of attrition. They think if they push hard enough, you'll give up. Claire wouldn't give up. Couldn't. Not with life growing inside her, depending on her strength. But then the doctored evidence appeared. Brett's lawyer presented text messages, supposedly from Claire's phone, threatening Vanessa. If you don't leave my husband alone, you'll regret it. Screenshots of emails where Claire allegedly called Brett's coworkers to spread lies about his affair. Phone records showing she'd called his office 47 times in one day. I never sent those texts, Claire insisted, staring at the fabricated evidence. I never made those calls. I know, Ruth said grimly, but proving they're fake will require a forensic investigation that costs $50,000, money we don't have. The tide began to turn. Media outlets that had championed Claire now questioned her stability. Was she obsessed with her husband? One article asked. Friends say she couldn't let go. What friends? Claire had no idea who they'd interviewed, but the damage was done. Then Vanessa gave a tearful television interview. Claire threatened me multiple times, she claimed, dabbing at dry eyes. I was terrified. Brett was trying to end his marriage honorably, and she just wouldn't accept it. The gala incident. That was after months of her harassment. We'd all had enough. Liar, Jenna shouted at the television screen. She's lying. But lies told convincingly enough became truth to people who didn't know better. The judge scheduled a hearing to reconsider the restraining order. If it was lifted, Brett could attend doctor appointments, be present at the birth, insert himself back into Claire's life illegally. We'll fight it, Ruth promised. But I have to be honest. Claire, even Sandra Hoffman's connections are working against us. 3 witnesses have recanted their gala testimony, claiming they were too far away to really see what happened. The video, Claire said desperately. The video shows everything. The video shows Brett and Vanessa dumping food on you. Their lawyers are arguing it was a mutual altercation, that you'd been screaming at them just before cameras started recording. Without audio, it's your word against theirs. Claire felt the world tilting beneath her. So what do I do? We prepare for the worst and hope for the best. The worst came 3 days later. Claire woke at 2 in the morning, her sheets soaked. Not from sweat, from amniotic fluid. Her water had broken at 33 weeks, and this time there was no stopping it. Mom, she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. Mom, it's time. The drive to the hospital passed in a blur. Contractions racked her body every 3 minutes. Too soon, too fast, too much. Dr. Parrish was waiting. Okay, Claire, your baby's decided he's done waiting. Let's bring him into the world. The delivery room was chaos, machines beeping, nurses shouting instructions. Claire pushed when they told her to push, breathed when they told her to breathe, and tried not to think about the fact that her baby is 7 weeks early. And then, through the pain and fear, she heard it. A thin, high cry, "Nah, it's a boy," Dr. Parrish announced. Small, but he's breathing on his own. They placed him on Claire's chest for just a moment. A tiny, perfect creature with Brett's nose and Claire's chin. She counted his fingers, his toes, memorizing every detail before the NICU team whisked him away. Dylan, she whispered. Your name is Dylan. Then the doors burst open. Brett pushed past security, still dressed in pajamas and a coat, his hair wild. That's my son. Where's my son? Sir, you need to leave, a nurse said firmly. There's a restraining order. I don't care about some piece of paper. That's my child. Brett lunged toward the NICU team carrying Dylan. Owen appeared from nowhere, intercepting Brett with an arm across his chest. You need to leave. Now. Get off me, Blackwell! Brett shoved Owen hard. What happened next occurred in seconds. Owen shoved back. Brett stumbled, crashing into a medical cart. Equipment clattered to the floor. Security rushed in, tackling Brett to the ground as he screamed obscenities. And Claire, watching from the delivery bed, felt something inside her break. Not her body, her spirit. Dr. Parrish's voice cut through the chaos. We're losing her. She's hemorrhaging. The world went dark at the edges. Claire heard voices shouting, felt hands on her body, saw the ceiling lights blur into streaks. Her last thought before consciousness slipped away was of Dylan, alone in the NICU, and whether she'd ever hold him again. Claire woke in recovery 2 days later. The first thing she asked was about Dylan. He's stable, Carol said, squeezing her hand. 4 pounds, 2 ounces. He's in the NICU, but he's breathing on his own. He's a fighter, just like his mama. The second thing Claire learned was that Brett had been arrested for violating the restraining order and assaulting hospital staff. He'd spent 1 night in jail before Sandra bailed him out. The third thing was the medical bill. $180,000 for the emergency C-section, blood transfusions, and NICU care. Claire's insurance would cover some of it, but she'd still owe at least $70,000. $70,000 she didn't have. Owens offered to help, Tom said quietly. But I told him we needed to talk to you first. Claire closed her eyes. She was drowning in debt to a man she barely knew, whose motives she couldn't fully understand. But what choice did she have? Tell him thank you, she whispered, and that I'll pay him back somehow. The next week passed in a haze. Claire was discharged but had to leave Dylan in the NICU. She visited every day, sitting beside his incubator, speaking softly about the life they'd have together when he came home. But home was her childhood bedroom. Her teaching position was still suspended. Her savings account was empty. And Brett had filed for full custody. The custody petition arrived via courier. Claire read it in disbelief, Ruth beside her. He's claiming your instability endangered the baby. Ruth explained. The premature birth, the hemorrhaging. He's arguing it was caused by your emotional volatility and poor decision-making. I almost died, Claire said numbly, because he violated the restraining order and attacked people in my delivery room. I know, but his lawyers are spinning it as you creating a stressful situation by involving Owen Blackwell, by fighting the divorce, by refusing to co-parent reasonably. Co-parent, he dumped pasta on my head while I was pregnant. Ruth's expression was sympathetic but realistic. The judge reviewing this case plays golf with Sandra Hoffman. I'm not saying it's decided, but we're fighting uphill in muddy shoes. That night, Claire found her mother crying in the kitchen. Carol tried to hide it, but her red eyes gave her away. Someone spray-painted our garage, Carol admitted. Called you horrible names. And they slashed 3 of your father's truck tires. Horror washed over Claire. Brett, we don't know. Police say without proof, there's nothing they can do. Claire wanted to scream. Instead, she went to her room and stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of everything crushing her chest. The next day brought worse news. Jenna's car had been set on fire in her apartment parking lot. Total loss. Security footage showed a figure in a hoodie, face obscured, using an accelerant and walking calmly away. It's him, Jenna said, her voice shaking with fury. It has to be him. But again, no proof. Brett had been at his mother's house that night, with witnesses. Claire sat in the NICU beside Dylan, holding his tiny hand, and whispered, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry I brought you into this mess. The lowest moment came on a Tuesday evening. Claire had gone to the hospital chapel, needing a quiet place to think. She wasn't particularly religious, but the silence felt holy. I don't know what to do, she said to the empty room. I'm out of money, out of options, out of strength. Maybe Brett should take him. Maybe Dylan would be better off with a father who has resources instead of a mother who has nothing. The thought horrified her even as she spoke it. But wasn't it true? What could she offer Dylan except love? Love didn't pay medical bills. Love didn't guarantee safety. Talking to yourself is the first sign of something, a voice said. Claire looked up to find Owen in the doorway. How did you know I was here? Your mom told me you'd disappeared. I figured you'd be here or the NICU. He sat beside her on the wooden pew. What's going on in your head? That maybe everyone's right, Maybe I should give up. Dylan needs his mother, Claire, not his father's money. His mother. His mother is broke, unemployed, and probably about to lose a custody battle to a man who assaulted her. Owen was quiet for a moment. Then he said, and then, I need to tell you something. About Brett. What? My investigators have been digging. Brett's been embezzling from his firm, $2.3 million over the last 18 months, funneled to offshore accounts. Vanessa's been helping him. They're planning to disappear to the Cayman Islands once the custody battle is resolved. Claire stared at him. You have proof, bank records, emails, wire transfers, everything we'd need to destroy him. Hope flared in her chest, bright and painful. Then we can stop him. We can end this. There's a problem. Owen's expression was troubled. Some of the evidence was obtained through methods that aren't exactly legal. If we use it in court, I could face charges, illegal surveillance, hacking, wire fraud. The Hope guttered out. So we can't use it. We could turn it over to the FBI anonymously, but that takes time. Investigations, warrants, building a federal case. Months, maybe years. And in the meantime, Brett could win custody. Claire felt the walls closing in. So my choice is let Brett take Dylan, or let you go to prison for helping me. That's not what I'm saying, but that's the reality. Claire stood, her legs unsteady. Everyone who helps me gets hurt. Jenna's car is destroyed. My parents' house is vandalized. Now you're risking federal charges? Maybe Brett's right. Maybe I am the problem. Claire, thank you for everything. Owen, but I think it's time I handled this myself. She left the chapel, leaving Owen sitting alone in the pews. She had no plan, no strategy, no hope, just the crushing certainty that she was out of options. That night, Brett's lawyer called with a settlement offer. Drop the divorce proceedings, the lawyer said. Sign an NDA agreeing never to discuss the gala incident, except $50,000. In exchange, Mr. Hoffman withdraws his custody petition and signs over full parental rights to you. Claire held the phone, dizzy with the implications. He'd give up Dylan completely. He wants to move forward with his life. The child will, as he's stated, unplanned. This allows everyone a clean break. Ruth, listening on speaker, was shaking her head furiously. But $50,000 would cover the medical bills, would let Claire start over, would end this nightmare. I need 24 hours, Claire said. You have 12. After that, the offer expires and we proceed with the custody hearing. Claire hung up and looked at Ruth. What do I do? Don't sign, Ruth said immediately. This is a trap. The NDA means you can never speak about what he did. He wins, you disappear, and Brett rewrites history. But Dylan would be safe. I'd be free of him forever. Would you, Ruth challenged, or would you spend the rest of your life wondering if you could have fought harder? Claire didn't have an answer. She had 12 hours to decide whether to accept defeat or risk losing everything in one final battle. And she had no idea which choice would destroy her more completely. Claire didn't sleep that night. She sat in Dylan's room, the nursery her parents had helped set up in their spare bedroom, and thought about choices. She could sign the settlement, take the money, ensure Brett never came near Dylan again, disappear into a quiet life teaching art and raising her son. Or she could fight, use Owen's evidence, watch him face potential federal charges for helping her, risk losing Dylan completely if the custody battle went wrong. Both options felt like defeat. At 4 a.m, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Check your email. Claire opened her laptop. The email contained a single attachment, a video file. She clicked play. The footage showed Brett and Vanessa in what appeared to be Brett's office. The timestamp was from 2 months ago, before the gala. They were reviewing financial documents, and their voices came through clearly. If we move the money now, Brett was saying, Claire will never be able to touch it. Even if she gets suspicious, I'll claim business losses. By the time the divorce is final, everything will be offshore. Vanessa leaned over his shoulder. And the baby, legal obligation only. I'll fight for custody just to keep her scared, keep her spending money on lawyers. Then I'll offer a settlement, give up rights, and we're free. Claire's hands shook as she watched. This was premeditation. This was proof that everything, the humiliation, the legal battles, the custody fight, had been a calculated strategy to destroy her. A second email arrived. More where this came from? FBI has received anonymous package. Arrest warrant being prepared. You don't have to use illegal evidence. Feds will handle it. You just have to hold on a little longer. Oh, Claire closed her laptop and cried. Not from despair this time, from relief. She called Ruth at 6 in the morning. Don't accept the settlement. We're going to fight. Are you sure? Brett's about to have bigger problems than custody of a son he never wanted. 3 days later, FBI agents arrested Brett at his mother's house. The charges: wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. Vanessa was arrested simultaneously at her apartment downtown. The media exploded. The man who'd humiliated his pregnant wife at a charity gala was now facing federal charges for stealing millions. The narrative flipped completely. Sandra Hoffman, for all her connections, couldn't stop federal prosecutors. She held a press conference, her face tight with fury, claiming her son was innocent, that he was being persecuted because of the viral video. Nobody believed her. Vanessa, facing 20 years in prison, took a plea deal. She testified that Brett had orchestrated everything, including the gala humiliation, to emotionally destroy Claire so she'd be easier to manipulate in divorce proceedings. He said if he made her look unstable, Vanessa testified, she'd accept whatever settlement he offered just to make it stop. The custody filing was always a bluff. Claire watched the testimony from the hospital, where she sat beside Dylan's incubator. He was 2 weeks old, still tiny but growing stronger every day. Your dad's going away for a long time, she whispered to him. And I'm so sorry. Not because he's gone, but because you deserved better. You deserved a father who wanted you. But something nagged at her. The victory felt hollow. Brett was being punished. Yes, but because Owen had crossed legal lines to get evidence, because someone had committed crimes to expose Brett's crimes. That evening, Owen visited the NICU. He brought coffee and sat beside her in companionable silence. The FBI has questions about their anonymous tip, he said eventually. They know the evidence came from somewhere. They're investigating how it was obtained. Will you be arrested? Maybe. Probably. My lawyers say if I cooperate, I'll likely face fines. Probation. If I don't, it could be worse. Claire set down her coffee. The settlement offer. Do you think Brett would renew it now? Owen looked at her sharply. Why? Because if I accepted it, if he signed the NDA and took his money, maybe the FBI investigation would lose momentum. No victim pushing for prosecution, no media circus. Maybe the scrutiny on how the evidence was obtained would fade. Don't, Owen said firmly. Don't even think about protecting Brett to protect me. I'm not protecting Brett. I'm protecting too. I made my choice. Claire, I knew the risks, and I'd do it again. Why? The question burst out of her. Why risk everything for someone you barely know? Owen was quiet for a long moment, watching Dylan sleep. Because 10 years ago, a girl I barely knew saw that I was hungry and needed help, and she helped without asking why. She taught me that kindness doesn't need a reason. This is me trying to live up to that lesson. Claire's eyes burned with tears. I can't let you go to prison for me. You're not letting me do anything. This was my choice, but he stood, preparing to leave. Brett's lawyer called Ruth this afternoon. He's withdrawing the custody petition completely. He'll sign away parental rights in exchange for you not testifying at his trial. It's over. Claire, Bush, you won. After Owen left, Claire sat alone with Dylan, processing everything. She had won, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt complicated and messy and morally gray. Brett would go to prison. Owen might face charges. Vanessa had flipped for a lighter sentence. Sandra Hoffman's reputation was shattered. And Claire was left holding a baby who would grow up knowing his father was a criminal. Life, she was learning, didn't offer clean endings. Just complicated ones you had to figure out how to live with. The question was, how do you teach a child about justice when the system that delivered it required someone else to break the law? She didn't have an answer. Maybe she never would. 6 months passed. Dylan came home from the NICU at 6 weeks old, still tiny but healthy. Claire returned to teaching part-time, grateful when her principal offered her position back with no questions asked. Brett was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Vanessa received 5 with possibility of parole. Sandra Hoffman moved to Florida, avoiding the Pittsburgh scandal. Owen faced charges for illegal surveillance and wire fraud. His lawyers negotiated a plea deal, 3 years probation, $500,000 in fines, community service, no prison time, but his reputation took a hit. Some business partners distanced themselves. Tech blogs ran articles questioning his ethics. Claire tried to reach out, but Owen politely declined her calls. "You need to focus on Dylan," he wrote in a text. "I need to deal with my consequences. We both need space to heal." She understood, but it hurt. Owen had saved her, and now he was dealing with the aftermath alone. Life settled into a routine. Claire taught her high school art students, came home to her parents' house, cared for Dylan, and tried to rebuild some semblance of normalcy. The viral video still circulated occasionally, but the intensity had faded. She was no longer that pregnant woman, just Claire Donovan, single mom and teacher. Then, on a Tuesday in March, Owen called. "I need to talk to you," he said. "In person? Are you free Saturday?" They met at a coffee shop near her parents' house. Dylan was with Carol for the afternoon. Claire arrived nervous, unsure what Owen wanted to discuss. He looked different, tired, older. The easy confidence had been replaced by something more weathered. "How are you?" she asked. "Surviving?" He smiled faintly. "Johan, same." They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Then Owen said, "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For making choices about your life without asking you. For obtaining that evidence illegally. For putting my judgment above yours. I told myself I was helping, but really I was trying to be a hero. And heroes don't break the law to save people." Claire stirred her coffee, choosing words carefully. "You saved me, Owen. And yes, you broke laws to do it. I've spent 6 months trying to figure out how I feel about that. And I think I'm grateful and uncomfortable in equal measure. You gave me my life back, but you paid a price I never asked you to pay." Owen nodded slowly. "Fair. But," Claire continued, "I've also realized something. We all make compromises with our ethics. Brett compromised his by choosing cruelty and theft. You compromised yours by choosing illegal surveillance to stop him. I compromised mine by accepting help I couldn't afford to refuse. None of us are clean in this. We just did the best we could with impossible choices." "That's a generous reading." "It's an honest one." Claire met his eyes. "So where do we go from here?" "I don't know," Owen admitted. "I came to apologize and to tell you I'm stepping back. You need to build your life without someone who made decisions for you. You deserve that independence." "What if I don't want you to step back?" Owen looked surprised. "Claire, I'm not saying I want some fairy tale romance," she said quickly. "I'm saying I want to be friends. Real friends. Where we're honest about the complicated mess we're both in. Where you stop trying to save me and I stop feeling guilty for needing help. Where we figure out what comes next together. I don't want to complicate your life more. My life is already complicated." But Dylan smiles now, and when he does, I think about the fact that he's alive and safe in mine because you broke some rules. I can't regret that, Owen. "I won't." They talked for 2 hours, laying bare fears and failures. Owen admitted he'd used helping Claire as a way to avoid dealing with his own loneliness. Claire admitted she'd been so focused on survival, she hadn't processed the trauma. "I think we both need therapy," Claire said eventually. "Definitely therapy." Owen agreed. Before they parted, Claire said, "Dylan should know you, not as some distant benefactor, but as the person who helped when it mattered. Will you come to dinner this weekend? Meet him properly." Owen hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that." Saturday dinner at the Donovan house was chaotic. Dylan spit up on Owen's shirt. Carol told embarrassing stories about Claire's teenage years. Tom grilled Owen about his business ethics until Claire kicked her father under the table. But it felt real, messy and complicated and real. As Owen was leaving, he paused at the door. "Thank you for giving me another chance." "Thank you for caring enough to risk everything," Claire replied, "even if it was ethically questionable." They both laughed, and for the first time in months, Claire felt something like hope. Not the naive hope she'd had at 24 when she married Brett, believing love conquered all, but a harder, wiser hope forged through trauma and survival. The hope that said life will hurt you, people will fail you, and you'll make mistakes trying to fix things. But you can still build something good from the wreckage if you're willing to be honest about the mud. Claire and Owen fell into an unlikely friendship. He visited twice a week, always bringing ridiculous gifts, a onesie with coding jokes, a mobile that played classical music, books on raising emotionally intelligent children. You know he's 8 months old, right? Claire said, holding up a book titled Teaching Your Toddler Philosophy. It's never too early to start thinking about the meaning of existence, Owen replied seriously, then broke into a grin when Dylan grabbed his finger. But the friendship existed in a strange liminal space. Claire was attracted to Owen. She'd be lying if she denied it, but the power imbalance felt too vast. He'd paid her legal bills, her medical bills, saved her from financial ruin. How could she separate genuine feelings from gratitude? Jenna, ever blunt, confronted her one afternoon while they watched Dylan play with blocks. "You're in love with him," Jenna said flatly. "I'm grateful to him. Gratitude doesn't make you blush when he texts. Love does." Claire threw a pillow at her. "It's complicated. Everything in your life is complicated. That doesn't make it less real." But Claire couldn't shake the feeling that starting a relationship with Owen would be building on an unstable foundation. He'd been her savior, her benefactor, her illegal surveillance-conducting guardian angel. Could he be her partner without those power dynamics poisoning everything? Owen, for his part, seemed content with friendship. He never pushed for more, never hinted at deeper feelings, which made Claire wonder if she'd imagined any attraction on his side. Then, on Dylan's first birthday, Owen brought a gift that changed everything. It was a framed photograph of Claire from their college philosophy class. She was laughing at something, a coffee cup in one hand, completely unaware she was being photographed. "I took this," Owen admitted. "10 years ago, I was trying to figure out how to talk to you, and I kept chickening out. So I took this picture instead, planning to use it as an excuse to start a conversation. But I never had the courage." Claire stared at the photo, then at Owen. "You've had this for 10 years. I'm not proud of how pathetic that is. Why are you showing me now?" Owen took a breath. "Because I need to be honest. I didn't help you just because of the muffins. I helped you because I've been halfway in love with you since I was 19 years old. And I need you to know that, even if it complicates things, even if you can never see me as anything but the guy who broke the law for you, I'm tired of pretending friendship is enough when it's not." Claire's heart hammered. "Owen, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I know the power imbalance makes this impossible. I know you might never trust that your feelings aren't just gratitude. I just needed you to know the truth." He left before Claire could respond, and she stood holding the photograph, her world tilted on its axis. Jenna found her an hour later, still staring at the picture. So he's been in love with me for a decade, and I have no idea what my feelings are," Claire said helplessly. "Yes, you do. You're just scared." "Of course I'm scared. What if I'm only attracted to him because he saved me? What if this is just trauma bonding?" Jenna sat beside her. "Or what if he's a good man who's been patient and kind, and you're allowed to love him without it being pathological?" "Claire, not everything in your life has to be a wound you're analyzing. Sometimes people just love each other." But Claire needed time. She called Owen that night and asked for something that surprised both of them: couples therapy. "We're not a couple," Owen said, confused. "No, but if we're going to become one-ish, I need help navigating the power dynamics. I need a professional to tell me if this is healthy or if we're both acting out trauma. Will you do that with me?" Owen was quiet for a long moment. "Yes, if it means there's a possibility of us. Yes." They spent 3 months in therapy sessions with Dr. Margaret Winters, a psychologist who specialized in relationships formed under traumatic circumstances. "This isn't uncommon," Dr. Winters explained during their first session. "Trauma can absolutely create intensity that feels like love, but it can also reveal genuine compatibility that existed before the trauma. Our job is to figure out which this is." They worked through uncomfortable questions about power, about gratitude, about whether Claire could ever feel like an equal partner. about whether Owen was seeking validation by being needed. It was hard, messy work. They argued. They cried. Owen admitted he'd always struggled with using money to solve problems because it kept people at a distance. Claire admitted she'd been attracted to Brett partly because she'd wanted rescue from financial insecurity, and she was terrified of repeating that pattern. The difference, Winters noted during one particularly difficult session, is that you're both aware of these dynamics and working to address them. That's significant. Week after week, they dissected their relationship. Dr. Winters pushed them to examine their motivations, their fears, their patterns. She made them practice difficult conversations about money, about boundaries, about the reality that Owen's wealth would always be part of their dynamic. You can't erase the power imbalance, Dr. Winters said bluntly, but you can be intentional about how you navigate it. Claire, that means asserting your independence, even when it's easier to accept help. Owen, that means respecting her choices even when you think you know better. They practiced saying no to each other. Owen offered to pay for Claire's car repairs. She declined and used her own savings. Claire asked Owen to babysit Dylan. He said no because he had work commitments. Small exercises in maintaining boundaries. 6 months after Owen's confession, Dr. Winters asked them a question that would determine everything. If Owen lost all his money tomorrow, would you still want to be with him? Claire didn't hesitate. Yes. Why was he? Because he makes me laugh, because he's patient with Dylan, because he listens when I talk about my students and actually remembers their names. Because when I'm with him, I feel like myself, not like someone who needs saving. Dr. Winters turned to Owen. If Claire told you she never wanted your financial help again, could you accept that? Yes. Owen said, it would be hard, but yes. Why would it be hard? Owen considered the question carefully. Because helping makes me feel useful. But I'm learning that being useful isn't the same as being valued. Claire doesn't need me to solve her problems. She needs me to stand beside her while she solves them herself. Winters smiled, the first genuine smile Claire had seen from her in 6 months. Then I think you're ready to try this for real. But on 2 conditions, Claire. You maintain financial independence, build your own savings, make your own choices. Owen, you respect those boundaries even when you want to help. Can you both commit to that? They could. Their first official date was appropriately awkward. Owen took Claire to a mid-range restaurant, not too fancy. At her insistence, they talked about everything except trauma, Brett, and legal troubles. They discussed teaching, technology, whether pineapple belonged on pizza, Dylan's obsession with throwing food. It felt normal, wonderfully, beautifully normal. When Owen kissed her goodnight on her parents' porch, Claire felt something shift. Not gratitude, not trauma bonding, just the simple, complicated feeling of falling in love with someone who'd seen her at her worst and stayed anyway. This is going to be hard, she whispered. Everything worth having is, Owen replied, and for once, Claire believed in happy endings. Not the fairy tale kind, the real kind, built on therapy and boundaries and honest conversations about uncomfortable truths. The kind that acknowledged the messiness of how they'd gotten here while still choosing to move forward together. 1 year later, Claire stood in front of her high school art class, demonstrating color theory on a canvas. 28 students watched with varying degrees of attention. It was a Tuesday, ordinary and perfect. Her phone buzzed. A text from Owen. Dylan just said, Owen, clear as day. I'm crying, could take down, send help. Claire smiled. Owen had moved into his own apartment nearby, close enough to visit regularly, but maintaining the independence they'd agreed was crucial. He and Dylan had formed their own bond, built on silly games and bedtime stories. After class, her principal stopped her in the hallway. Claire, can we talk? Anxiety spiked. She'd been back for over a year, but part of her still waited for the other shoe to drop. I wanted to tell you before it goes public. Principal Adams said, we're naming you Teacher of the Year. The students nominated you. Every single one of your classes wrote letters. Claire felt tears prick her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say yes. The ceremony is next month. You'll need to give a speech. That evening, Claire sat with her parents and Owen, Dylan playing at their feet. She told them about the award, and Carol cried happy tears. My daughter, Tom said gruffly. always knew you were something special. I'm really not, Claire protested. I'm just a teacher who survived a nightmare. No, Owen said quietly. You're a woman who was publicly humiliated, who fought through a traumatic divorce and custody battle, who nearly died bringing Dylan into the world, and who still shows up every day to teach kids that art matters. That's not just survival. That's strength. The award ceremony was small but meaningful. Claire's students attended, some of their parents too. Jenna sat in the front row, cheering loudly. Owen held Dylan, who clapped at random intervals. When Claire took the podium, she'd prepared a speech about teaching, but standing there, looking at the faces of students who'd supported her through her darkest year, she changed course. A year and a half ago, she began, something terrible happened to me. Many of you saw the video. Some of you probably still have questions. I want to tell you that I'm not going to share all the details. Not because they're secret, but because I'm more than that one moment. She paused, gathering courage. I'm a teacher. I'm a mother. I'm someone who makes mistakes and needs help sometimes. I'm learning that accepting help doesn't make you weak. Fighting when you're scared doesn't make you brave. It just makes you human. Dylan squealed from the audience, and laughter rippled through the room. What I want you to understand, Claire continued, is that life will hurt you. People will fail you. You'll fail yourself sometimes, but that doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're alive and you're learning. The art we create in this classroom, it's not about perfection. It's about taking imperfect materials and making something meaningful anyway. She looked at Owen, at Dylan, at her students. So thank you for this award. Thank you for seeing me as more than my worst moment. And thank you for reminding me that sometimes the most beautiful art comes from the messiest process. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, students hugged her. Parents thanked her. One girl, a quiet freshman named Emma, whispered, "My parents are getting divorced. It's really bad. But seeing you makes me think I'll be okay." Claire hugged her. "You will be, I promise." Driving home that night, Owen in the passenger seat and Dylan asleep in back, Claire felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Peace. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked. "Happiness." Claire said, "How it's different than I expected." "How so?" "I thought it would feel light, easy, but it feels heavy in a good way. Like I'm carrying something precious that took work to build." Owen reached across the console and took her hand. "That's because it is." 3 months later, Owen asked Claire to marry him. Not at a fancy restaurant or on a beach, in her parents' living room, with Dylan playing with blocks and her parents pretending not to eavesdrop from the kitchen. "I know we said we'd take things slow," Owen said, kneeling on the worn carpet. "And we can wait as long as you want. But I love you, Claire. I love Dylan. I love your weird family and your chaotic life. I want to build something permanent with you, something that acknowledges the mess we came from and still chooses the future." The ring was modest, nothing like Brett's ostentatious diamond. It was a simple band with a small stone, and it was perfect. "Yes," Claire said, "but we're doing a prenup, and I'm keeping my name professionally, and we're still doing therapy." "Deal," Owen said, laughing. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony in her parents' backyard. Jenna was maid of honor. Dylan, now 2, toddled down the aisle as ring bearer, got distracted by a butterfly, and sat down halfway to examine a dandelion. The ceremony was imperfect and beautiful. Claire's vows acknowledged the pain they'd survived and the work still ahead. Owen's promised to respect her independence while building partnership. When the officiant pronounced them married, Dylan clapped and shouted, "Yay!" and everyone laughed. At the reception, Ruth Martinez cornered Claire. "I never told you this, but I almost didn't take your case. I thought it was too messy, too much media, too risky. I'm glad I was wrong." "Me too, Asa," Claire said, later, dancing with Owen while Dylan napped on her father's shoulder. Claire thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago, humiliated, broken, certain she'd never recover. That woman would be amazed by this moment. Not because of the happy ending, but because of the journey, the therapy, the hard conversations, the boundaries set and respected, the choice to love someone not because he saved her, but because she chose him. What are you smiling about? Owen asked. Everything, Claire said. The whole messy, complicated, beautiful everything. As the sun set over her parents' garden, Claire held tight to the life she'd rebuilt. Not perfect, not easy, but hers. And sometimes, that was the best kind of happy ending, the one you fought for, earned, and built with your own imperfect hands.